We'll call the meeting of the Senate Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee to order. Senator Goodman, I know I didn't give you any advance notice, but would you say a opening prayer for us, please, sir?
Y'all pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the day, Lord. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for the gift of salvation. Lord. We thank you for all of Georgia's farmers and what they mean as far as just providing food to us, Lord, and what they mean to these rural economies all over our state, Lord, the jobs that they provide, food security they give us, Lord. And, Lord, we just ask for wisdom and discernment as we go forward throughout this committee meeting to make good decisions, Lord, on behalf of the ag industry in the state of Georgia, Lord. Thank you for all your many blessings. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Got a good crowd here today, and appreciate the committee members for coming. We're in the short rows before crossover, so a lot of meetings going on, real busy. Before we get started, Chairman Mullis, I'm going to recognize some special guests. Morgan and Calder, y'all know them from our bi-weekly test every morning for COVID. Stand up, Morgan and Calder. Thank y'all for being with us. They've brought with us today Dr. Doug Britton. He is the Agricultural Technology Research Program Manager at Georgia Tech, and I've invited Dr. Britton to introduce himself to us and tell us a little bit about the resources available for ag industries at Georgia Tech. And you could, if you would, go to the podium, please, sir. So this, I don't know if this is live streamed or not, but all right, what do I?
Thank you, Chairman Walker and members of the committee. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity just to say hello. As the chairman mentioned, I manage the Agricultural Technology Research Program at Georgia Tech. And most people don't know we have an Agricultural Technology Research Program at Tech, so we're trying to change that. Our vision is really to transform the poultry, agribusiness, and food manufacturing sector in the state of Georgia by bringing advanced technologies to this endeavor. We've been around for many years, heavily focused on the poultry industry, but more recently have been moving into other sectors, including peanuts and other row crops and vegetables and fruit. Our goal and our tactical activities revolve around robotics and automation, around advanced sensing, everything from image processing all the way up to chemical and biological sensors. And then environmental sciences and environmental technologies to help support water and other needs in the state, and then food safety. And those tend to be the general areas that we work in terms of research. We also have an outreach program and a technical assistance program. And the technical assistance program is designed to help support ag initiatives or ag companies in the state of Georgia that may have a technical question that we can help answer and provide solutions for. So that's just our program in a snapshot. We would love to have all of you come visit at some point in time, and we appreciate the support of the legislature in our program and as we seek to support the state by bringing technology to the agriculture endeavor. So thank you very much, Chairman. I appreciate this time.
Thank you, Dr. Britton, and we appreciate so much what Georgia Tech Research Institute does for Georgians and our economy, and what you in particular do at the Ag Technology Research Program. Thanks for being with us today. Another special guest, my wife Adrienne, is here with us today. So without her support, I wouldn't be able to serve up here, and I greatly appreciate her coming today. We've got, so committee members, if you don't have one of these ag snapshots for 2021, I suggest you get one. I've got a few here. Will Bentley with Georgia Agribusiness Council can get you one if we run out, but it's got a lot of really good statistics in here. We know Georgia agriculture is our #1 industry, and we know poultry is our #1 sector of agriculture in Georgia. But we're the #1 poultry producer in the country, and #1 peanut producer in the country. We lead the nation in a lot of fields: forestry, peanuts, poultry, and other things. So all that's in here. It's a good resource for you. This is what we're going to do today. We've got 4 bills before us. We're going to start off with Senate Bill 195 from Chairman Mullis. Senate Bill 205 from Senator Parent. We're going to have a hearing only today. Senate Bill 222 from Senator Summers. And then last kind of late addition, Senate Bill 247 from Senator Anderson, and that's also going to be a hearing only. But at this point, I'll turn over the program to Chairman Mullis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. It's glad to be with such an outstanding committee. I mean, the leadership on this committee is just inspiring, and I want to thank you for that. Also good to be with the First Lady of the 20th District, another inspiration to me. So, and also for the people in the room and for this committee to oversee food and fiber for Georgians and all America and all the world. And being my age, fiber is really important to me. So thank you so much. All right. Senate Bill 195.
I think the food and fiber.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. All right. This is a simple housekeeping bill. And we're talking about Georgia hemp. In fact, it's so good of a housekeeping bill, you can actually cut it right, tie it up, and sweep with it. So it's an outstanding housekeeping bill from the Georgia Hemp Farming Act that the General Assembly passed in 2019. We can imagine it. Hey, can I take this off up here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I mean, somebody turn the heat on in here. All right. The issue has come to light that since the passage of this bill in 2019, it has had unintended loopholes and consequences that would allow someone to get around the prohibition in the act on the resale of hemp or dried hemp material. The current language in the act has some definitions of processing that creates a potential loophole. The definition states process or processing means converting an agriculture commodity into a legal marketing form. This term does not include merely placing raw or dried material into another container or packing it in a raw or dried material for resale. The loophole for this prohibition on raw or dried material is the ability that once someone acquires the processing permit, someone could possibly define such common harvesting practices such as drying, curing, shucking, bucking, storing, trimming as a process. So we want to make that clear. By the way, I'm sorry, we're working off the substitute. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, would you read the number? I don't have it.
LC 441683S.
Thank you. The language in this committee substitute for Senate Bill 195 would clearly define that these practices alone could not be considered as process or processing of the hemp material. This change to the Hemp Farming Act has the support of the Department of Agriculture. And I don't know about the FFA. I would hope that maybe Senator Hatchett would know in the future. But the FFBA is also supporting that. That's the future fat boys of America. They're all good with this. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And I have former State Senator Doug Stoner with me, who is an expert on this issue, and be glad to testify. True? True? All right, give me a softball.
Are there any questions for the author? Chairman Harper.
To the distinguished Rules Chairman, glad to have you with us.
Yes, sir, and let me thank you for all the bills that are still awaiting for my decision that you have in my committee.
I think I'm going to continue. To my good friend, Senator Mullis.
Indeed.
Thank you for coming, and I appreciate your willingness to come before the Ag Committee, because I know how important food and fiber is to you, and how much we enjoy that, and making sure that we continue to do the good things for our ag community in the state of Georgia. What I was wondering is if you could give us an example of what shucking and bucking is, since you explain it in your bill.
Well, shucking would be taking the leaves down around the product. Bucking is really when you ride a horse or something, I believe. I can't give you that one. I apologize. And let me thank you for your expertise in this, because I'm sure you know this or you wouldn't ask me.
Well, that is true, Mr. Chairman, but I'm glad you're explaining it to the committee. I'm going to leave it to you. Could you do you know what the scientific name for hemp is?
No, I do not.
Okay, it's cannabis sativa. Yeah. That's a
And
good
thank
one.
you for that.
You're welcome.
I know your expertise being a farmer yourself.
That's right.
And again, I'm no farmer, but I do appreciate the food and fiber and other things you produce for us.
Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Good bill. Look forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
No more questions.
Any other questions from the committee? Yes, ma'am. Senator Jackson.
To the Distinguished Rules Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
for bringing this very easy
Thank
to
you.
read bill. You keep referring to this loophole. How has this caused problems to people in the past?
That's such an easy question. Let me invite Doug Stoner up here to answer that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And introduce yourself, since I didn't do it
Yeah, I'm
properly.
sorry. I'm a former member of this chamber, just anyone knows, and also of the House. And yes, my last name is Stoner, but that's not why I'm dealing with him. So, as to your issue, when the bill was passed in 2019, it did not really define process or processing, but it did clearly state that you did not want to have raw material, in a sense, sold directly to the public. And so, as it states, when you get a processing permit, again, we don't define, at this point, haven't really clearly defined what process is, because there are different processes that you do with hemp. And so the thing was looking at, there is the possibility that someone could declare something a process or processing out of these common or traditional farming harvesting methods. And it still is somewhat of a raw material if you really think about it, because at that point, and so in a sense you could legally potentially get around the law, in the sense of that prohibition that we've put up, by saying, well, this is actually, I've done a process, and it's whatever you define as a process. And so that's what this is trying to do, is just like, no, it's still somewhat of a raw material. And this isn't like pecans or tomatoes or things like that, because there's federal regulations, and it has to do in the sense of this product, versus, you don't have those type of issues with tomatoes or pecans in the sense of a raw agricultural product. This is a little different. So that's what this is about.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, and thank you, Doug. And if I may add, the Department of Agriculture would define that when they do the rules and regulations for the permit process. Too. Is that correct? Give me one of these. Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if Senator Stoner would please tell us who he's with, for the record, please.
Yeah, I represent Smith Nurseries, which is it's a actual grower and a producer, a cloner.
Do you need any other? All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Oh, no.
Is there-
Yeah, I'm not really Jeff Mullis. I'm the clone from that nursery. I'm kidding.
Chairman Anderson with a question.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm just trying to figure out why you are bringing this bill to us.
Because I was at.
Did you get caught trying to sell some of this product? Oh,
No, sir. But I will tell you that the reason it was illegal for many years because they made rope with it. And then all of a sudden DuPont made rope and they made it illegal. Now, I'm not suggesting that DuPont and other people paid people off to make hemp illegal, but something went wrong, didn't it?
thank you, Mr. Chairman, for
You're
bringing
mighty
this
welcome.
bill.
Thank you.
Okay.
I saw Hatchett with his hand up, and I want to hear this one.
Okay.
I have a question.
Senator Hatchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Stoner, I believe.
Okay.
Would be
All
better.
right.
And the question would just be, is this an exhaustive list of traditional farming practices that should not be included?
That's exactly the point. It's actually specifically to hemp. in the sense of what you call traditional farming practices that are used in the harvesting of hemp.
Okay, so
And
there's,
so it's specifically to that, yeah.
but it's all inclusive. These are the only
Yes.
ones that we want to include?
Yes, at
Okay.
this, yeah.
Are you done, Senator Hatchett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
I think to Senator Hatchett's point, it's traditional farming practices that would include these and others, similar to these, yes. I think you're reading that, that's the way I read it. Is that,
Yeah, I didn't know if we needed to say including but not limited to those commonly known as, just in case there is another traditional one known as a different name, but I'm not the expert. That's why I ask, I don't know.
I think,
All right, we're getting out of control here. The floor is yours, Senator Hatchett.
I would say this is at this point, you know, because this was a conversation obviously we had in the sense of what would be considered traditional that someone could claim was a process. If for some reason someone comes along with something else, I think we would come back. But at this point, I think this list has, you know, been looked at and reviewed several times, and so I don't see the need to add anything else because we don't want to, you know, we don't be too broad at this point in everything, particularly for the department ability to do their rules and regulations too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the Ag Commissioner has worked with the author on this, and it meets the approval of the Ag Commissioner, and he's very familiar with the federal regs related to hemp, and so I'm pretty confident we got this where we need it to be. Senator Jackson, one more question.
Yes, sir. If the time is appropriate, I recommend do pass.
Well,
I'm inspired.
I think we've shucked and bucked this bill enough. Let's so is
That's
your
kinda
motion
funny.
to do pass by committee substitute LC 441683S? All right, I have a motion. I have a second by Senator Anderson. All those in favor, please. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Pass unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and if I can be of service in my little old committee, please let me know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Senator Parent, she's brought us an interesting bill, and we're going to hear this. It's something I'm not very familiar with, but I'm interested to learn more about it, and it has to do with food delivery services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Don't know if there's any shucking and bucking, but I bet we could figure something out if need be, if I get too boring. I appreciate the opportunity to have a hearing on Senate Bill 205. So what this bill does, it's not a very long bill. Hopefully everyone got the chance to read it, but what it does is it protects local non-chain restaurants from being charged really high fees from delivery apps. So high amounts for the use of online order, delivery, and pickup applications, only limited though to public health emergencies such as the one we are in right now. So what it would do is it would provide that no third-party food delivery platform could charge more than 15% of the purchase price of an online order for the use of its services, which excludes tax, gratuities, and other fees. And in addition to that, the app would not be able to make up the lowered fee that would be capped at 15% by reducing the wages of the delivery drivers or skimming off the top of their tips, which actually one of the apps did until it was sort of discovered and they got some bad press about it for a while. Just a little bit of background. According to the National Restaurant Association, more than 110,000 eating and drinking establishments closed for business temporarily or permanently last year, with nearly 2.5 million jobs erased from pre-pandemic levels. The restaurant and food service industry sales fell by $240 billion in 2020, setting industry growth back more than 5 years, all due to, of course, the public health emergency. Meanwhile, the four largest delivery app companies were able to double their revenues during the period between April and September 2020 over that same period in 2019. And DoorDash is actually going public. That's one of the big four. And in their prospectus, they laid out how they had tripled their orders in the first 9 months of the year. So just a couple examples of how the delivery fees can get a bit out of control, imperiling the survival of the restaurants themselves. Last summer, Giuseppe Badalamenti, a restaurant consultant and owner of Chicago Pizza Boss, put online a Grubhub receipt from one of the restaurants he works with. The restaurant had 46 orders in this receipt, and the bill total was $1,043. But the restaurant only got 370 of that. Of the $666 in fees that Grubhub charged the restaurant, only 94 of that, or 95, was earmarked for delivery. $206 was a generic commission charge, which is the baseline cost of doing business with the app. And then an additional $231 covered promotions, which the restaurant doesn't have to accede to, which is basically, as this article in the Washington Post puts it, the cost of not getting buried in the app's search rankings. This was troubling this year simply because for our restaurant industry, takeout really became the only way to try to survive and weather through until the public health emergency abated. And of course, that's true even where there are differences between what different jurisdictions allowed about in-person dining, but the reality is even where restaurants were more open, many Americans did not want to go out and eat indoors. And so it really doesn't have that much to do with that. When you're under a public health state of emergency and you're in a pandemic, business is just not going to be normal for many industries, and restaurants were ones that were some of the hardest hit. And I know that I saw some figures that we might lose up to 50% of restaurants during the pandemic. I don't think that terrible figure has come to pass. I know we have some restaurateurs here who could probably enlighten us on where exactly we are and where the industry expects to be once we get out of the public health state of emergency. But suffice it to say that it's obviously an extremely difficult period, and I know I'm not alone that we don't want that valuable industry decimated in our state. So normally the apps would request or try to have their baseline commission fee be 30%. And so I thought that was quite high. And so that's why I had 15% in the bill. Some other jurisdictions have done this. A bunch of cities have. At least one state has passed this bill. The caps on the delivery fees in those jurisdictions range between 15 and 20%. So really, the bill just aims to ensure that third-party food delivery platforms can't take advantage of local restaurants during a public health state of emergency. One last thing before I know we have others with an interest in this that would like to be heard, and before I take questions. During my research, one quote I came across that troubled me is that Colin Wallace, a gentleman who was Grubhub's former head of innovation, wrote online as sort of concerned restaurateurs started posting on social media networks like the gentleman I told you about in Chicago, where he put the $1,000 receipt where the restaurant only got 377 online. People start commenting. Well, Colin Wallace, Grubhub's former head of innovation, said, platforms are not actually in the business of delivery. They're in the business of finance. In many ways, they are like payday lenders for restaurants and drivers. They give you the sensation of cash flow, but at the expense of your long-term future and financial stability. I thought that was a pretty incredible statement out of someone who used to work for one of these. Whether or not that's true, I'm glad to have a hearing on it because it caused me to scratch my head a little bit. Very briefly, this is slightly outside the immediate conversation with this legislation, but my husband and I noticed, used the apps a lot more during the pandemic, as many have, and noticed that not infrequently something went wrong. Like we didn't get our order, it gets canceled 2 hours later, it never comes. That happened a number of times, and the problem was we were blaming the restaurant. And I found out that it's almost always the app's fault. and consumers don't really know that, and so that's yet another hit on restaurants. So the restaurant industry nationwide and here in Georgia has been trying to work on like a sort of agreements with the apps where certain things would be a little bit more transparent in terms of what the customer can expect and what and having transparency as to fees and things of that nature, and things like what I just mentioned, where almost every customer would assume it was the restaurant that was misposting its menu or closed when it shouldn't have, and in many cases it's the app, sort of not intentionally, but just with everything going on, the app is misrepresenting what is occurring at the restaurant, and then that further hurts a restaurant's bottom line. Restaurateurs report calls from irate customers when their orders get canceled, and they're like, we had no idea, we're not open, and the app had represented that they were. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions about this fascinating topic. I mean, it's a pandemic time and technology app time, so it's an interesting and timely conversation, if anyone has questions.
Okay, I will open the floor for questions in just a minute. I want to tell you we've got 3 people that have signed up to testify by phone, and then we have one in person. Is that right, Bill Gowdy? So bear that in mind. We've got a restaurant and 2 restaurants, somebody from Uber, and then a restaurant. So
yes, so Mr. Chairman, if you would rather, I'm certain that those individuals have far more expertise and would be a more valuable use of the committee's time for questions anyway. I'm happy to yield.
Why don't we hear from them? And
Yes,
then
absolutely.
We'll
I think
let
that's
you
a
close.
good decision.
And
Thank you very
any
much.
questions. So let's start with Mr. Gowdy from Copeland's. I think he's here. And for just, if you would, please introduce yourself, tell us who you're with, what your role is,
Okay.
and then go from there.
Thank you, Chairman Walker and committee, for allowing me to speak in support of 205. My name is William Gowdy. I go by Bill. I'm the owner and operator partner in the Copeland's of New Orleans group here in Atlanta. We have 2 restaurants, Cumberland and Kennesaw. We've been in business this year for 23 years. We've spent a lot of time, surviving and at times thriving. The restaurant industry is a very difficult and challenging industry, which I'll speak to in a moment. I have been in the restaurant industry since I was 15 years old, worked my way through high school and college, and ended up staying on after spending some time in mechanical engineering at the University of Maryland. So I'm a unique story in terms of the restaurant. Our restaurants are New Orleans restaurants, Cajun Creole, brunch buffets on the weekend, things that we can't do right now because of the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we had over 200 employees at our 2 restaurants. We got down to where we actually just had our management teams on salary, and we're trying to survive with those management team members. And then we've kind of clawed our way back to the point we have about 170, 180 employees back on payroll now with COVID. We have been around a long time. We've got 2nd-generation families working for us now. And I feel a very big responsibility to the community, and we've employed a lot of people and created a lot of jobs over the years. So COVID comes along, and I'm not sure the background of the committee members in terms of your industry or corporate or independent business background, but restaurants are unique. Restaurants operate out on the edge of a cliff. That's always my analogy that I use. And all it takes is a strong wind, and you're going to lose restaurants over that cliff. Well, I think we all know that COVID was much more than a strong wind. Okay, I've got a graphic that breaks down profitability for your average restaurant that I'll present to you all at the end here, showing that on average restaurants generally at the end of the day are lucky to make a 4 to 5 to 6% return on their investment. And you're managing facilities, and you're managing bar product and food product and people and all of the legislative and compliance challenges that you have. It's a very complex business, and it's hard to be successful in this business. And then we're constantly up against the challenges. So COVID was a big challenge. COVID comes along, we're shut down, and we're now going to go. We realized very quickly that if we're not on board with these third-party providers, we need to get on board immediately. We had dabbled in it a little bit, historically, but chosen not to do it because of the cost. When COVID came along, you didn't have a choice. You had to survive. And they were sending you a lifeline, the perception of a lifeline, I should say, when in fact it was an anchor. And it wasn't a little sea anchor, it was a ship's anchor on a rowboat that drug you to the bottom. It's really hard to give up 30% plus of any revenue that you get into the restaurant business and make any money. She mentioned earlier that it's, we thought it was a lifeline, but if you're not a smart operator and you don't really know the difference between cash flow and cash, you get into this kind of cash flow routine with these third-party vendors that you just can't get out of. And a lot of independents have felt that. 30% of independent restaurants have failed in the United States so far. We're approaching that number right now. And the third-party services, to her point, have doubled or tripled their revenue, and we're just trying to survive. It's interesting for me standing here because I'm a free market guy. I'm like, the market will take care of it, and we need to find our way, and we need to, if it's not working for us as a business, we've got to find our way through. So to ask government to be involved in something like this for me it's a really extreme situation. But I think that's what COVID was, right? It highlights a really rare and uncommon and extreme occurrence, and that's why I was willing to come here and talk about this. Love of food, love of serving people, camaraderie, that's what restaurants are known to do. We probably have the opportunity to do $1 million in third-party revenue with our 2 restaurants across the 3 or 4 platforms, and we're going to pay those companies between $300,000 and $400,000 of those revenue streams. So, again, we're not AT&T, we're not Verizon, we're not a lot of these big players that can work in those kind of margins. So, thank the committee for your time very much.
All right, any questions for Mr. Gowdy? I have a question or two. So, how many? We've mentioned Uber Eats. I think we mentioned that anyway, and then we have Grubhub. How many of these platforms are there, and who all do you interface with at Copeland's?
So the 4 primary in our market, Uber Eats is the big player in the Atlanta market, and this is very regional. Different players have taken over different segments depending on where you are in the country. They have different presence. Uber Eats is the big player in the Atlanta market. We have dealt with Grubhub, DoorDash, and Postmates, but we haven't stuck with all of those because of the problems with the execution. Mentioning other pitfalls, we get chargebacks from these vendors every week that say, oh, the customer didn't like your food, or they said they didn't get something that we sent them. So on top of all these fees, we're seeing $100, $200, $300 a week in chargebacks, where the vendors are saying, well, the guest didn't like your food. And they're just, per their contracts, they're just passing that stuff right back to us as the restaurant owners. Now, my position is pretty simple. That's your customer, right? If you want to make your customer happy, don't give them my money. But that's something that we deal with as part of these contracts. It is universally known, because our drivers, the drivers that work for these services, that are also our same employee pool, servers and bartenders and cooks and things like that drive for these third-party services, it is universally known that drivers eat desserts. They talk about it all the time. So the drivers are on their way to a delivery. They take the desserts out of the bag and they eat it in the car on the way to the delivery, and then the guest charges it back to Uber, and Uber charges it back to us. So again, just talking about, we work in a world of nickels and dimes, like trying to get there and trying to make money and trying to, find our way. And at every turn, you come up across something else. So,
one more question, and then I've got some questions from the committee members. Are you being required to sign any kind of long-term contract with these platforms, or is it, can you get out of it at any time you want to?
Yeah, they're not long-term contracts. You can give them a month's notice and get out of the contract. It may even be shorter on a few of them. But the contracts are definitely universally across the industry average 30%. We've seen some for more, And interestingly enough, the big players, the big restaurant groups that have hundreds or thousands of restaurants, those are the only groups that really have any success in negotiating lower rates for those contracts. If you're a small independent, I'm a franchise, but I'm a 2-restaurant franchise away from my parent company, so I kind of live in both worlds. I've got a foot in the independent and a foot in the franchise. The big players can negotiate 22 or 24, slightly lower rates sometimes with these players, but independents, who are most challenged by this time, aren't in those positions.
And one more question are there any other practices used by these platforms that you view as unfair, or, are they, do you have platforms that advertise Copeland's on their website when you're not even contracted with them?
Yeah, that's a Postmates. That's definitely a Postmates. One of the other services has done that in the past. We've actually sent cease and desist before COVID, where we've had these third-party delivery services represent your menu, steal your logos, and represent themselves as you, and then resell your food. They send drivers, they place orders, they actually buy the food at full fare and send their drivers with the markup. We had that problem a lot over the years leading up to COVID. Postmates, I think it's Postmates and Grubhub. I believe DoorDash and Uber don't use that model, but I would have to double check that, sir.
Okay, thank you. I've got to center something. Okay. All right. Chairman Anderson.
Sir, when they pick up your food and they delivering it, who's liable for that food? If someone gets sick from that food, or if that driver puts something in that food,
Sure.
Who's liable for the food once it leaves your store?
I think we're very much in the gray area on that. But ultimately, we prepared the food and sent it out the door. As we talk about, again, small business challenges and frivolous lawsuits and slip and falls and just all the things that we deal with, that's another grave concern for us as restaurant operators, that there's another avenue for people to kind of make those false claims, or, once the food's kind of left our control, if that driver goes shopping and wanders around and shows up a couple hours later to deliver the food, we don't have a lot of control over that, but the chances are that we're going to be held liable for it. So it's a serious concern.
Chairman Harper.
Going back to I know this is kind of outside of what Senate Bill 205 is addressing, because it doesn't address the chargebacks, but I do have a question about that since you brought that up.
Yes, sir.
So the chargebacks, when that happens and they Grubhub or whoever charges you as the restaurant and they get money from you, do they turn around and give that money back to the customer, or do you know?
It is our understanding that they do. It's our understanding, but I'm not sure in all circumstances.
So do you know if that chargeback is equitable to the price of the food, or is it higher in some cases, or you don't know that either?
I believe it is for the item price that the guest
single item
actually was charged. I don't think that they charge us back for fees and things like that.
Okay.
But I would honestly have to double check our accounting on that to
So
make sure.
in that instance, you gave the example about the dessert.
Right.
Is there a way, do you have a way in your contract, or is there a platform that allows you to dispute charges when you get charged back?
There is not a way in the contract, in the platform, but we've created one because we got sick and tired of being abused. We actually have the driver sign a log, or we have them sign tickets that certifies these are the items I'm leaving with, and they sign for those items. And when we get those chargebacks every Monday from the week prior, we're sending logs and disputing those chargebacks. And fairly universally, we've been able to begin winning those over the last few months.
Okay.
So, a small win in the overall. But if I might, talking about disparities and challenges for the restaurant industry, chargebacks in general, talking about credit card industry chargebacks, I'm not sure if the committee's familiar with that, or it even crosses the scope of your world. But in the world where you go to a restaurant and you spend $100, and the restaurant authorizes your check for 20% over, $120 authorization to include any tip that you might leave. Do you know if you leave $10 additional, $130, the merchant banks can dispute that chargeback as a partially authorized chargeback. And the $10 they will get back from the restaurateur, and the bank will keep it. They won't give it back to the customer. So, you know, you talk about this one, this is at the root of just wrong for me, right? That these big banks that are making billions and billions of dollars are just going after small businesses because of a loophole in the contract or a loophole in the authorization system. The guest meant to leave that $130, but the bank's taking $10 back because of a loophole in the authorization process. Just another example of some of the disparities that we face.
All right. Senator Goodman.
I was just going to ask you, I know all about a middleman. I farm for a living, so I understand that. Yeah, but I live in a very rural part of Georgia, so we don't have all these delivery services where I live at. But you know, getting elected to office and being in Atlanta, we use Uber to get around town a lot. Of course, we pay for that, you know, on our credit cards or whatever. But through these services, is the restaurant has to pay for? I mean, does the consumer not pay for any part of it?
Well, that's the other part of the equation. Is the services are charging the guests. They're charging delivery fees or other fees on top of the money that they're taking. So they're pulling off both sides. Again, I parallel it to, you know, the credit card companies to some degree, you know, where you're dipping in every well and taking a piece of the pie. The hard part about this is at a time where restaurants are just literally failing, and you've got these multi-billion, trillion-dollar conglomerates that are just really taking it to the independent restaurant owners. It's very challenging.
Just real quick, we got a few other people to get on, and
I understand. I'll be brief, but I think this is important. So, following up to Senator Goodman's question, because I think this gets at what Senator Parent's bill is attempting to address. So, if I understood you correctly, that the consumer gets charged fees, and the restaurant gets charged fees. Is that what I understood you to say?
The restaurant always gets charged fees, certainly a percentage, and then there are marketing fees if you want to be placed towards the top, and they can stack and stack. I know that from the consumer side, because my kids drive me crazy with the Uber orders that come to the house all the time. The fees change on the guest side.
So if I come to your,
they go up and down in that.
So if I come to your restaurant and I get a meal, say it's $50 to eat that meal, what would that same meal cost if I ordered it through one of the apps?
Depends on the pricing structure and the items, but you know, $65, $70, $75.
So if I paid you $50 at your restaurant, out of that $70, how much would you get back if I ordered it through the app instead of paid you $50 at your restaurant?
So our retail pricing, if we're charging retail pricing through the app of $50, they're taking 30% off the top. That's the starting point. Before you stack other
so
fees.
They would cut your $50 by 30%.
That's correct.
So you would only, at that point, you would only get $35.
That is exactly
for what
correct.
I would have paid you $50 for if I was sitting in your restaurant.
That is correct.
Okay, that was what I was trying to get to, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And that's the average. It goes higher than that as well, depending on what you're structured for.
thank you, Mr. Gowdy. Appreciate it. We're going to take some calls now, or try to get them on the phone. So this is, we're trying to reach John Metz Jr. with Marlowe's Tavern and Street Cafe.
Hey, is this John? Hey, okay, well, I'm about to put you on speaker for the Ag Committee to testify for Senate Bill 205.
Mr. Metz, welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear us okay?
I sure can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Can you all hear me?
Perfect.
All right. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you all for listening to us and the Georgia Restaurant Association and the restaurateurs of Georgia. You know, my name is John Metz. I'm the owner, co-founder, executive chef, and CEO of a couple different companies, one called Marlowe's Tavern, which we operate 18 restaurants here in Georgia, and we just opened a new one called the Woodall down in Midtown Atlanta. And we've been operating here for 25 years. We've got approximately about 1,000 people here in Atlanta that we employ over the course of those restaurants. And you know, we're real concerned about and appreciate you all considering this in terms of the impacts that we've had, obviously, with COVID and the special exemption you're listening to today. And for us, it's as many have alluded to so far in talking with the representatives of Karen and everyone from the GRA, we continue to get our P&Ls sliced up by many different entities, one of which has become the third-party delivery. And to be honest with you, for us, we hadn't had third-party. We only kind of tested it throughout the course of time leading up until COVID, and then as soon as that happened, we really employed it in almost every location we have, because in a means of survival. And for us, it represents a decent size of our sales. And for what happened, we wouldn't have survived without it. And so it it gave us some sales opportunities to try to survive, number one, which was good. But the cost of doing business with these third-party delivery companies, et cetera, is costly, as you've heard already. It ranges from different people and different agreements that you have with them, but it's as high as 30% of what we do. And so as we did that, we noticed that our food cost and cost of goods for that particular section of our sales business was impacted. So food cost was higher, et cetera. And so it was a big challenge for us, and remains that. And so we're just looking for some relief to be able to, take care of our business as we're coming out of this, and hopefully we get through it quicker, sooner rather than later, as I think the entire world does. But for us, we could use any help we can get to help soften the blow from a P&L perspective as we try to get out of this mess we're in and to survive, to live and feed some more people another day.
All right, thank you, Mr. Metz. Questions for Mr. Metz? I don't see any questions. We appreciate your testimony.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if anything else you need, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, let's do Uber next. Switch it up. So we're going to hear from somebody that has opposed the bill. Theron? Trevor Dunison with Uber.
Hey Trevor, I'm about to put you on speaker to testify for Senate Bill 205 for the Ag Committee.
Hey Trevor.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good. Welcome to the Senate Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee. I hope you've been watching the other testimony, but the floor is yours.
I have. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Trevor Tennyson, and I'm the Director of Public Policy and Communications at Uber, and I oversee the South. I want to thank Senator Parent, first of all, for looking into this industry. It's a growing and complex industry, and certainly we look forward to working with her and this committee. I think it's important to say that over the past several years, the process of food delivery has evolved significantly. It used to be a simple relationship between a consumer, a food establishment, and a delivery person, but obviously now it includes app-based technology and other major national corporations. I think one of the reasons we've been able to grow our business so successfully, specifically in Georgia, is because of our restaurant partners, and we demonstrate that through a quick and transparent process. Just to walk you through a little bit of how the Uber Eats platform works, I think there's been some discussion, but I want to clarify. When a restaurant or other food establishment is interested in partnering with us, a member of our team will walk the restaurant through the basic options included in our partnership. And there's really three options, and I want to make that crystal clear to this committee. There's three options that the restaurant can pick. One is they can use their own delivery workers. Two, they can use our delivery people, or they can use a combination of both. And we explain the difference between each option. Also, if the restaurant partner doesn't want to use delivery, they can actually have a feature where the individual who's ordering the food can simply go pick that up at the restaurant. And it's important to note we charge 0% for pickup orders. So in the example that was given of the $50 meal, if the eater wanted to order through Uber Eats to pick it up, they could do that, and there would be 0% charge to the restaurant as commission. So restaurants have kind of three tiers of fees that they pay to us. They can choose a 15% fee, which is where they use their own delivery workers, or they pay a 30% fee to use our platform, our technology, our insurance, all of the things that we build into our platform, and use our delivery people. And again, we don't charge any other fees to restaurants whatsoever. It's simply these commissions in this three-tier system: 0 for pickup, 15 if they use their own delivery people, and 30 if they use ours. And they can choose to alternate between these options seamlessly. For example, if a restaurant is using their own delivery staff and then gets too busy 1 hour of the day, they can literally log into the to the iPad we provide them and tap to use our delivery network at a touch of a button. And then they can turn this on and off to get lower commissions when things slow down again. So the bill before you today seeks to dictate the terms of two private party contracts that were negotiated in good faith. And I think it's important to note that it would be a new precedent in Georgia law if this bill were to pass, whereby the Georgia legislature would be dictating the terms of two private party contracts. Many choose to have Uber Eats facilitate their delivery for them because it means not having to pay for a worker on their own by the hour all day to wait for orders that may or may not come in. They choose to pay. They can choose to pay a bit more on the individual order to have Uber Eats facilitate that order only when an order comes in. So this offering is more important now than ever because restaurants are cash strapped and many can't afford to pay workers to be on call all day. In fact, it's important to note that the National Restaurant Association isn't even in favor of these commission caps in this bill, given the downstream impact it could have on actually reducing demand for restaurants. So I'm happy to chat more about kind of the National Restaurant Association and how they have come with their principles. So I think it's important to note what these fees go to. They go to onboarding our new delivery people, including background checks for every person on the platform. It ensures that the delivery people earn a fair amount for their work. It's for maintaining the safety of our platform, including $1 million insurance policy on each delivery and personal protective equipment to protect delivery people during COVID. It's marketing our services to customers, including advertising and marketing to drive demand to these local restaurants. It's technology service, including order management, application maintenance, dispatching technology, and also a team of dedicated customer service specialists to provide support to the restaurants should they have any issues. So that is kind of what I wanted to get across today. I'm happy to answer any questions and really appreciate your time.
We do have a question, Mr. Trevor. Senator Hatchett, and I may have to repeat it, but anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Trevor. I have a quick question about the 30% that is charged if an Uber driver is used. How much of that goes to the Uber driver themselves?
So I think the question is how much of the 30% goes to the Uber driver themselves?
Yes.
It typically depends on each individual scenario. So depending on how far a courier is away from the restaurant to pick it up, depending on how far the eater is away from the location of the restaurant, depending on how high demand is at that time, we also charge the eater a fee. So typically that eater fee can be anywhere from 99 cents to $2.99 to sometimes higher, $10.99 if it's really a long distance and also a really high demand period. So there's an algorithm that calculates the pay of the courier. Some of that may come from the 30% that we charge to the restaurants, but the majority of that actually comes from what the eater pays.
So beyond the 30%, Mr. Chairman, if I can continue, beyond the 30% that Uber collects from the restaurant's potential profits, they then will charge, you said, some type of fee for a delivery that would go to the driver themselves?
That's right. The eater fee, most of the eater fee would go to the driver. That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
But now, a perfect example of that is if it's a 99%, or sorry, a 99-cent eater fee, then obviously the courier is getting paid more for that. So that would be a case where if it's a really close nearby restaurant and the eater is really nearby and the driver doesn't have to go very far and there's very low demand at that time, so we have a lot of drivers on the network at that time, and let's say the eaters only charge 99 cents for that trip, then some of that driver pay will come out of the commission.
All right, you got a question from Senator Goodman.
Thank you for testifying today, Trevor. I just wanted to ask, I'm a farmer and we're part of a co-op, and we operate a national co-op. We have DCs, we have freezers, we have everything that we have to do to get our products to the grocery stores, insurance, everything. And we're able to operate that co-op for 6 to 7% every year. And so, you forgive me for asking this question because I don't know a lot about your business, but for just 15% for selling, it seems to me to be a high commission. And knowing what we do on the farm level, I just, for just, having the website and everything, would you speak to that, please?
Did you hear that, Trevor?
He unfortunately cut out right at the end. I couldn't hear the last part of the question.
Speak to the 30% fee.
The 15%.
Or 15%.
With no delivery.
With no delivery. Compared to what he's able to do at the farm with his co-op.
Yeah, so I think that's the flexibility that we're trying to convey to restaurants, which for the 15%, you're paying for the technology, you're paying for the exposure to a very large eater base, you're paying for the advertisement, you're paying for the infrastructure that we provide. Through our technology application, you're paying for the customer service specialist to support that transaction, but you are providing the drivers yourself through whatever means you have. So we try and talk about it as a package where 15% gets you this package, 30% gets you this package, and it's totally up to the restaurants on what they want to select. And to my earlier point, they can switch back between those two packages with a click of a button at various hours of the day. I hope that answered your question. I'm sorry if I cut out a little bit at the first part.
Okay. We got a question from Senator Ramon.
Just have a quick question. At top of 15% or 30%, whatever you choose, how many other types of fee you can add up? How many different types?
Trevor, what
how many other fees?
Do you charge the restaurant besides the commission?
Nothing. We charge the restaurant zero other fees. There is the option if restaurants want to pay an additional fee for marketing their restaurant, which is essentially having their restaurant higher in the queue in the app so that eaters see it first, similarly to how grocery stores charge brands for kind of high visibility on the shelf. But if a restaurant just wants to sign up and use the Uber Eats platform, they either pay 0% for pickup, 15% for their own delivery people, or 30% if they use our delivery people, and that's the only fees that are ever charged to the restaurant.
All right, and speak to the chargeback issue that was brought up.
Yeah, so sure, appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. So it is correct if the gentleman was correct. If there is a complaint from the eater that they did not receive all the items, that the items were missing or incorrect, then we give that individual a refund, that eater a refund for the menu price of that item, and then we go back to the restaurant and back charge them for that issue or that challenge. In the case where it is our responsibility, either because the trip took too long or something happened with the delivery person, or they forgot an item, then there is a process where our customer service reps will not charge that back to the restaurant. But we take that on an individual case-by-case basis. Sometimes a hamburger doesn't have a bun, and the eater ordered the bun, and in that case we would charge that refund back. But those are those conversations happen on an ongoing basis.
Okay, I'm going to take two more questions. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trevor, can you speak to, have your commission fees changed since the beginning of the pandemic? Have they gone up or down? And can you also tell us how has your business increased? Have you gotten more restaurants or less restaurants on the Uber Eats platform since the beginning of the pandemic?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Senator. I think so. Our fees have not changed. We have not increased fees whatsoever at all after the pandemic. I shall say that this 15%, 30% model was pre-COVID, and in most of the situations, restaurants that were on pre-COVID, these were negotiated prior to COVID, and we did not increase them after COVID. Those new restaurants that are coming online are subject to the same terms. To your second question, we have seen a massive increase in not only the amount of restaurants that are signing up to participate, but also those eaters who are looking to our platform and others to get food delivered to them because of the circumstances of the pandemic. I want to say we are super sympathetic to the restaurants' issues and have launched grant programs and campaigns with restaurants to highlight them in our app. We've waived advertising fees. We currently have a grant program going on in the city of Atlanta, as well as some other cities where restaurants can apply for grants. We certainly sympathize with and want to partner with our restaurants to help them out in their time of need. But I think what we have seen in other states where these caps have been put in place is, as the delivery service and the technology platform, if we are only able to charge the restaurant a certain commission because we are capped due to law, that cost then gets pushed down to the eaters, given that we have to be able to pay for all the things I listed earlier. And what we've seen, and there's actually a report that just came out this week from the Progressive Policy Institute that actually shows that commission caps actually hurt restaurants in the long run, because as we have to pass those fees to the eaters are now paying $4, $5, $6, $7 for a delivery on their end, and thus they're less likely to order. So restaurants have actually seen their volumes decrease in orders on the platform because those fees have been passed on to the eaters, and thus lower demand to the restaurants.
Okay, one more question, Chairman Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand, Trevor, thank you for being with us. I understand there's a lot of conversation about the fees to the restaurant, the fees to the consumer, et cetera, so on. I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize that there was significant fees charged to the restaurants. I thought I, as the consumer, was the one that ate most of those fees because I'm the one that was ordering the service. But that's not where I'm going or directing with my question. Other than the fees that you charge, so the fee to the restaurant, the fee to the consumer, the delivery fee, whatever other fee there may be, marketing fee, et cetera, my question is when I go on your app to order from restaurant A, if I was to compare the menu prices of restaurant A to the menu prices if I went to restaurant A, would they be the same or would they be different? Do you also increase the price of the products on your app for that particular restaurant?
Yeah, great question, Senator. We do not. The price listed on the app is the menu price.
Okay.
And the restaurants are responsible for inputting that into the platform.
Okay.
So we don't control what they input, but the guidance and some contractual terms state that the menu price at the restaurant must be the price that you're putting in the app.
Okay.
So we're not making a fee there, or making any revenue there.
And you're just speaking strictly for Uber on that, I would
That's correct,
assume.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it. That was helpful.
Thank you very much.
Okay. One more. This is Mr. Vipul Patel with US Cafe. He's for the bill.
Hey, this is Ryan with the Senate Ag Committee. I'm about to put you on speaker to testify for Senate Bill 205. Okay, here you go.
Hey, Mr. Patel, I assume you've been watching this committee meeting, and we've had a lot of information given to us, and I would ask you to please just keep your remarks to new material or fairly brief.
No, I'll be very brief, and thank you very much.
You've been watching this committee meeting, and we've had a lot of information given.
I'm sorry, a little bit of background noise. I apologize. Thank you, committee, for allowing me to speak, and I will keep it brief. My name is Vipul Patel. I'm the owner of US Cafe. We have 2 locations in Smyrna, Georgia. We did have 1 location in Buckhead, but we had to permanently close that in March 2020 due to COVID and the dining restrictions in place. My Smyrna restaurants have been open for 33 years. We have a total of about 22 team members. I purchased the restaurants in 2007 from the original owner. Prior to that, I was actually in the corporate finance world. I worked as a lender for various organizations, including SunTrust and GE Franchise Finance. US Cafe is a fast casual restaurant. We're focused on all-American fare, burgers, fries, chicken wings, etc. So just briefly, we started utilizing delivery services actually prior to the pandemic. Originally, we started with a local delivery service at the time called Zifty. That was in 2015, and that was primarily with our store in Buckhead. We then added Uber Eats in 2017 and all delivery partners in 2019. So we currently use all 4 of them in the Atlanta area. It was a necessary strategy for us because we saw that our sales were going down because consumers were utilizing the convenience of the delivery service. Fortunately for us, pre-pandemic, we look at the number. We look at sales, and we look at the number of sales from our delivery partners and our organic sales from takeout and dine-in at our stores. And historically, in the past, they were around less than 10% of our sales. So while the delivery partners are taking 30%, it didn't represent a majority or a large amount of our sales. During the pandemic, however, things changed, right? I mean, not only did our sales go down from dine-in, takeout, et cetera, but the percentage of sales that were delivery went up. So it went up from less than 10% to 25% of our sales were now delivery through the delivery partners. And of course, that created some margin pressures for us. The fees, as we all mentioned, are normally 30%, non-negotiable, and that impacts our profitability. Our prime cost, food and labor, just food and labor to get the food out is averaging 60 to 65% of sales. So 60 to 65% of sales is food and labor. That only leaves 35%, 40% of sales to cover everything else. And then so with our delivery partners, we're now putting 30% they get, which now leaves me 10% to cover my rent, my utilities, insurance, all the other operating costs. And so, I definitely agree with free market. I get it. I understand it. Nobody's cuffing my hands to say, hey, you got to use these guys. But if the consumers want it, and for me to continue to be viable, it is a necessary evil. I need to participate. And during situations like this in the pandemic, it is a larger percentage of my sales, and as a result, there are margin pressures that I have. I know, I do want to keep it short, so I'll just leave that up for any other questions that you guys may have on the committee.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patel. Appreciate your brevity. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, Senator Perrin, if you'd like to close it out, and if there are any questions for the senator, we'll take those at this time.
Just very briefly, thank you for hearing the bill, and I'm glad that we could have a lively discussion, and I think everyone probably learned something. I certainly did. So I appreciate that opportunity, Mr. Chairman. If anyone has any questions for me, happy to answer them. If not.
Okay.
If I may. Thank you. I know, Senator Parent, in your bill, you're using 15% as the number, and I know earlier you used a $1,000 bill example, and I can't remember all of the details of that particular example. Do you know maybe what the highest percentage is that maybe has been used or charged in these instances, if that makes sense? Is it 50%? Is it 45%? Is it 60%? Do you get what I'm trying to ask?
I get what you're saying, and so in that particular example that I cited, it was 65%. But I would have to do more research to figure out if that was a total outlier or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if probably Georgia Restaurant Association could get their some data for us specific to your question on what the average ends up being normally,
Okay.
right? That's kind of what
Yeah,
you're
and that's kind of
asking.
what I'm getting at. I was just trying to figure out what that
was. I
well,
think,
one, what
yeah.
would be the highest, and then two, what would kind of be the average of that.
I'll write it down.
If can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Another question, Mr. Chairman. I know I asked Uber this question, and apparently they do not, but I know in your bill on line 22 you referenced the purchase price means the total menu price of an online order. Are you familiar with any other, and the reason I asked that question is because you specifically point this out in your legislation. Do you know of other online apps that may charge more for the menu items than what the restaurant actually charges, or do you know if that is if they do that or
Yeah,
not?
I mean, I am aware that there are different business models.
Yeah.
And I referenced one app that is not Uber that had come under some glare because they were like skimming off some tips that consumers had left. But I believe they stopped that practice since that sort of came to light. So I do know there are different business models. It is my understanding that some of them would change the menu price, but I do, as I say, I think they have different business models, and their business models also can change. So I don't want to represent without researching currently who is doing that.
One more question.
Let me get to Senator Summers.
Senator, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Senator, just help me with this right here. If we limit Uber or any of these apps to do what your bill is requesting, could they not just not do it for the restaurants? Could they just basically say we're not going to go out there and deliver for them, and really cause them more harm to make them have to deliver their own stuff? I'm just
No, it's a fair question. Yeah. I mean, I think you heard testimony that the fact that the fees are so high is why many restaurants only kind of got in with the apps when they were forced to because of the pandemic, which is also why my bill, because the fees are so high. So yes, I think that you are correct that if the apps have no customers, the apps would have to change. And there are a couple different ways that, of course, that could happen. But I obviously want to reiterate, because I think it kind of bears following up with your question, that we really want in the bill to limit it only to public health state of emergencies and restaurants with 25 or less locations, because as you heard in the testimony earlier, the bigger chains or conglomerates are able to bring their market power to negotiate a little bit better with the apps. So we wanted to write it so that we limited our interference with the sort of contractual relationship and the free market to truly exigent circumstances that are an aberration.
You got another one? All right.
If you don't mind, Mr. So in relation to this, since your bill does deal directly with the state of emergency, how does this interact with our state's gouging laws? Is there?
That is a great question, and I do not actually know the answer to that. I was thinking about that today and ran out of time to look it up, because when I was explaining the bill to a few people, that's exactly the term that I was, thinking of. But I don't. Obviously, no one has decided that it runs afoul of that yet, because I do believe that the restaurant industry and others would have probably looked into that.
Okay. Well, we can look at that later.
But we should. We should. I have not looked at it.
I think because you're using the state of emergency as the premise. Maybe that's where we need to look at and try to see how this interacts, or how this practice interacts with what current state law says in relation to what the powers the Attorney General may have to react if needed. So that was my last question.
Great point, Senator
Thank you,
Hubbard.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Of course, the man from Uber testified that their fees have been the same pre-pandemic. So. But it'd be interesting to see if the other platforms have raised their fees since the pandemic started. All right. Thank you, Senator
Thank you very much.
Good discussion. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Next, we have Senator Summers, and feel free, Senator Summers, to present your bill from there. If you'd rather go to the podium, you can. Senate Bill 222, and if you'd read us the LC number, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you don't mind, I'll just stay right here.
Yes, sir.
This is Senate Bill 222, LC 5010190. That's 0190. I'll make this short and sweet. It's actually a very simple bill, but a very needed bill. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it official that the pecan becomes the official nut of Georgia. As you well know, we have many things that's official in Georgia, blueberries, peaches, different type of fruits and whatever. We even have our own state bird, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to make sure that the people of America understand that Georgia is the #1 pecan producing state in the world. We're #1. The largest pecan grower, I believe, in the United States resides in my district. And when I say the largest, I'm talking about over 10,000 acres of pecans, well over. And then they're planting pecans at a rate that's amazing right now. In fact, the Mormon church bought, I think, 15,000 acres over and around Sumter County and some of the areas in Freddie Powell, Senator Sims' district, and it's all going to be planted in pecans. So the pecan is an extremely important thing, and I'd like to see us, move it forward and make the pecan. The Georgia Pecan Association wants this. I believe it was started last year. It got hung up, but we're going to try to get it out this year and get it finalized. But there's no questions. That's what Senate Bill 222 does.
Appreciate you bringing this, Senator Summers. Will this be your first bill?
Well, it's sort of like my first and my half, yes, sir.
All right, any questions? All right, Senator Jackson, I saw you first. So.
I have two questions. My first one is, how do you pronounce PECAN?
Well, there's two ways of pronouncing that. You can call it a pecan or you can call it a pecan. Now, a pecan is what we eat. They're kind of cheap and free. Pecans is what we sell.
All right, and then my second question, the bill asserts at the very beginning that this is the only edible native plant to North America. I'm not.
I'm about native plant.
Native edible nut.
Edible nut. I mean, we're not edible to North America. Obviously, you got cashews out in California, those type things. We're talking Georgia, and when I say edible nut, I mean this is the nut we grow and thing. A lot of people get confused, Senator Jackson, with peanuts.
Oh, I know those are legumes.
This is, thank you.
Well, I just don't know that is a correct assertion that we would be codifying into law that it's the only edible nut native to North America. It's on line 9. I think we just need to fact check that.
We got that from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
I didn't make it up.
the Google doesn't believe it, but it's okay. That's fine. As long as you can correct.
All right, Senator Harper.
So, Senator Walker, Mr. Chairman, since you clarified that this is Senator Summers' first bill, I appreciate you making sure that we knew that, you know, Senator Walker, if you remember when you had this bill last year, we had a lot of conversation about whether or not the pecan should be designated as the official nut of the state of Georgia. And I'm just wondering if Senator Summers thinks that there aren't any other people under this building that might meet that definition instead of the pecan.
Well, there were several before us, and there are probably several will come behind us, but this distinguished group right here does not fit that.
All right, thank you. All right, any further questions on Senate Bill 222?
There's a lot.
All right. We'll enjoy this in rules if it gets there. All right. So do I have a motion?
I see that's coercion, Mr. Chairman. I think he's trying to coerce me into voting.
Neither am I on the hymn nor either.
Do we have a motion? All right, Senator Jackson moves do pass. Senator Goodman, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Hopefully you can visit with Chairman Mullis and get it on the eligible rules.
I'll take a few edible comments.
Yep, all right, thank you. Now we have the late arriving bill by Senator Anderson. I appreciate him working on this with Georgia Farm Bureau and the Department of Agriculture, Senate Bill 247. And because I didn't have this in time to get it on the agenda so the committee could be prepared, it's a late arrival. I've decided just to have a hearing only on this. But if Senator Anderson will tell us about his bill, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it will be a very short hearing because I'm about to burn up. This bill, all it's doing is bringing it, modernizing the Agricultural Commodities Promotion Act up to date, getting it to the modern times. Some parts of the act hadn't been updated since 1961. So all it simply is doing is right now any of the commissions have to advertise in the AJC. Well, it's very costly to advertise there, but at the same time, it's not really getting to the people that it really needs to get to. And I wouldn't think really probably nobody's really reading it in that newspaper anyway. So now it's going to be to where it'll be with the Georgia Department of Ag website and the Department of Ag bulletin board. So it'll be, you know, public knowledge there and advertised there. And also it'll be where we can have in-person public periods that will be held issuing new, amended, and existing marketing orders by allowing an online public comment period. And I'm going to basically stop right there. And I mean, you know, it's just bringing it up to modern times.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Does anybody want to speak to this bill? Bo, you want to, Mr. Warren? Give us the background and the challenges that you see with the way we're currently operating and how many commissions there are and
sure, absolutely,
that
Mr. Chairman.
kind of thing, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. Members of the committee, Bo Warren with Georgia Department of Agriculture. We've had discussions for several months with our friends at Georgia Farm Bureau about bringing a few of these items up to date, if you will. And So so during this process, we're glad to partner with them and make some of these changes. So to date, we've got 15 commodity commissions. We actually have 16 because wine and grape just established their own commission here recently. In order to establish a commodity commission, the group of growers come to this body, the General Assembly, and adopt in statute the actual commission, which creates the board for that commission and gives them the authority to assess their representative growers. And then those funds, typically those funds are held by the Department of Ag in trust, but those funds can only be used at the board's discretion for research, education, and promotion of that particular commodity. And each commodity is different. We've got apple, beef, blueberry, cotton, equine, milk, vegetables. Again, we've got 16 of them now. And I would argue that the bulk of those funds are used for research, primarily if someone wants to partner with Dr. Britton at Georgia Tech or University of Georgia, Fort Valley State. But then also, those funds can also be used for education and promotion of that commodity.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. And the Peanut Commission is outside of this, correct?
That is correct. Many years ago, the Georgia Peanut Commission removed themselves from under the authority of the Georgia Department of Agriculture. So what that means is we don't staff that commission. We don't handle their voting ballots or count their ballots. We don't handle their funds. All that is done outside of Department of Agriculture. And we actually have a propane commission, and that's set up the same way.
Any questions for Mr. Warren? I've got another question or two just to sort of educate me and others. So the challenge is one of the challenges is the cost of advertising for 5 days in the it doesn't say Atlanta Journal, but essentially it's the way it's written, it's got to be the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. 5 days of advertising is cost prohibitive for some of these, especially the smaller commodity groups. I think that's one challenge. And then the other has to do with the public hearings and basically somebody from the Department of Ag going somewhere to have a public hearing, and oftentimes nobody shows up.
That's correct. And the public hearings, I mean, that's not particularly onerous for us, but in today's day and age, do we really need to have a public hearing? Why don't we just have a 30-day written comment period? And at least allow that to be an option that we can choose from. Another example, which seems a little bit trivial, but somebody mentioned the bulletin board. We've got on the second floor of our office, we maintain a bulletin board, and anytime there's a major change to a commodity commission or new commodity commission, we have to post it on that bulletin board. Well, members of this committee can have access to that, but the typical farmer cannot. We had a situation a few years ago with our Apple Commission, which is one of our smaller commissions, and in order for them to advertise in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I think it was going to cost $1,500, which is about the extent of their budget, quite frankly. So if we can utilize either our website at Department of Ag or Farmers Market Bulletin to be that legal organ, if you will, to get that information out, I think we would reach more people. When there is a major commodity commission change, our friends at Farm Bureau, Agribusiness Council, our Cattlemen's Association, those commodities do an excellent job of helping us get the word out anyway. So it would in our opinion, it would just streamline the process.
All right, thank you. Mr. Goodman?
Well, I'll just say this. I mean, I've been on the board of the Blueberry Commission since it was founded until I got elected to office, and this bill is going to make things a lot easier. I can speak from personal experience as far as the handling of these commodity commissions. So I'm very much in support of it.
All right. Senator Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, very respectfully, and I understand your position, but every member of this committee is signed on to this bill. And so I wonder if you would kindly consider us going ahead and voting on it, given that every single member of this committee has already signed on to it, with all due respect.
I appreciate that, Senator Jackson. We're going to get a vote on it. It's just not going to be today, but I assure you we'll get a vote on it. I think the late arrival, we just need to be sure there's nothing in here that is unintended or could be improved upon. The market bulletin, for example, is not listed as an option or a requirement. I think in some of our discussions, some of us thought having it in the market bulletin would be a good idea for the notice. I'd like to just have some discussions about possibly having allowing a virtual hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Certainly, we're gonna get a vote on it and get it moving. I think it's a real good measure to provide modernization and efficiency. Yes, sir.
In closing, I just want to, I thank you, Senator Jackson, for making that comment, but as you be here a little bit longer, you'll understand that, I mean, this bill is early, it's fresh, and I've learned over the years that you can improve a bill before you bring it to full committee. So that's really, I kind of asked the chairman that, let's just, everybody look at it, because it's new, and I mean, it's just hot off the press.
Thank you, sir.
And, but we will, thank the chairman that we'll get a vote. But bottom line, this bill here, it's gonna get it to our people, the people that it means something to. And it won't be just up here in the Atlanta paper where nobody will never read it. And I mean, I think it's getting our people educated and letting them know what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business to come before the committee?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Got a motion, how about a second? All in favor, amen. Thank you.